The following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz along with Dan Rylance, and two very familiar guests. They've been here many times and we love it when they come on because they always have something interesting to share with us and have good conversations. Stu Rieckman, the executive editor, and Alex Hummel, the editorial page and conversation editor of the Oshkosh Northwestern. I got good. Stu's title down. I always have to look and refresh my memory on yours. Are you getting used to it though?
Yeah, I hope the audience is too. That's the ultimate.
Well, I think so. I've heard good things, so
Thanks.
I think you're doing something good. So anyway, thanks to both of you for being
Thank
here
you.
tonight.
Thanks for having
we
us
always
again.
enjoy having you guys on. Want to talk about a lot of different stuff. I mean, certainly there's no shortage of topics to talk about, but you know, we're taping this on the 7th of August, and our new city manager has just been, you know, on the job for a few days already. Any conversations with him so far about how things are going, or no?
Well, we had him in to meet with the editorial board before he took his office officially, and we had a very pleasant conversation with him. I know you've had him on the show.
Yeah, we really enjoyed him too. A lot.
I think he brings a different demeanor to City Hall, and I think that's a good thing. I hope that the media and the council and the community is able to step back and give him a chance to do his job before they make any judgments or expect any miracles to happen.
Yeah.
Expectations too high, maybe?
I think there's some built-up, pent-up expectations that might not be fair for an incoming new city manager to realize.
Well, I think too, people are, there's some in the community who are expecting him to come in and rule with an iron fist when it comes to salaries and benefits. And, you know, when he was on the show, he said exactly what the four of us at this table know, and that's his hands are pretty well tied when it comes to a lot of that. There's a quid pro quo thing, and there's state laws, and there's only so much that he can do. And at the end of the day, you can ask people to absorb more of the cost themselves, but you can only force them to absorb so much.
Well, I mean, that's the beauty of collective bargaining. You know, it's built on negotiations back and forth, and to expect public employees to give something up, you have to have something on the table in exchange. And so I think there's a misperception in the community about public employees and about how you can balance the budget on their backs that is somewhat misinformed.
There's no one thing you can come into Oshkosh or any community and do, and all of a sudden, boom, you know, you're better off, especially in an economy like this. But in listening to him when he came to visit our editorial board, it seems like he's pretty attuned to all of the number of things he can do as a leader and address them and you know, work on economic development, work on things with the staff, maybe do a little bit of innovation here and there within City Hall, or figure out new ways to accomplish things with a smaller staff. That's something organizations everywhere are dealing with these days. So I think he's got a pretty realistic approach, but he also comes in with enthusiasm and a public persona that just hasn't been there before. You know, sort of approachable, enthusiastic, confident. You know, a guy you could sit down and talk to, just like, you know, anybody, I guess.
Sure. Well, you know, we liked a lot of things about him, as I'm sure you guys did. But one of the things that really stuck out in my mind was, you know, before, when Dick Wolink was here, he and Dave Potak or Jackson Kinney, whoever, mostly Potak and Wolink, they would come forward with some kind of idea that they wanted to, you know, you have to do this to fix this or whatever, but they always only gave the council one option. And it was, okay, you either do this or you're going to be in trouble, and here's why.
Yeah.
And what Mark Roloff said when he was here, and he probably told you guys the same thing, is he wants to offer choices to the council and say, you know, here are your options. And I think that's a win-win, I think.
I think it is, because it takes advantage of the supposed strength of the city manager form of government is the professionalism, and also brings in the elected body as the policy makers, and have a collaborative type of attitude at the table, as opposed to, well, you've only got one choice, it's either this or we're sorry. So
Did you sense that he might have a different relationship with the department heads than the other previous city manager?
What do you mean by different?
Well, he told us on the show, he said, you know, I don't want to have my departmental meetings talking about what we did last night. I want plans and options, like Cheryl just said. And he said, the last thing I want is I don't want to come into my office and read something that happened in one of my departments in the paper the night before.
I think he's going to, and again, you know, a lot to learn about him and his management style, but I think when he gives a report to our city council and ultimately our public, I think he's going to give a report that's talking about, here's what we're working on, here's what's coming down the pike. And I think the council's made that pretty implicit that, you know, this is what we want to see, a little bit of a change. As opposed to, here's what we did, here's the reports that reached my desk. I think he's going to start forcing the city council and probably the whole community to start looking at, here's what's coming, here's what we're pushing for, and I think that's a good thing.
Well, one of the points he made when we chatted with him that resonated with me is that he was fully aware of what I call the Friday afternoon surprise, where, you know, the council members get their packet of information on Friday, and there's something very complex that they're reading about for the first time, and they're asked to make a decision on Tuesday night.
Or actually, they're asked to give a quote to the newspaper first.
Yeah, that afternoon. And he very much understands the problems that can cause council people and cause the overall operation of the city. So I don't think you're going to see any more of these late-breaking issues develop on Friday that they're looking for action on Tuesday.
It doesn't make for good government to do it that way.
It does not.
But it favors the city manager if you want to wait until Friday to do it. He doesn't live in Oshkosh yet, and it's unclear to me how soon he's going to be. Did you get a sense when he's moving to Oshkosh?
Well, it's dependent on his ability to sell his house in
Okay.
Grand Chutes.
Okay.
And I think that in this real estate climate, I think the council is going to be a little bit sensitive to the market pressures and whatnot. I mean, there's no question that he's going to buy a house in Oshkosh.
Right.
His children have already been in town looking at you know, schools and neighborhoods and
It's
whatnot,
required of
so-
him, I think, too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's in his contract.
Got to
isn't
live in
it?
Oshkosh.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
but you know, if it, and I think they said 90 days from the time that he accepted the job, and it may go a little bit beyond that. I would hope that the council would be sensitive to the housing market.
They'll give him until training camp.
Yeah.
And when training camp comes, you better be ready to make a
That's really
decision.
good.
Because the draft.
Unless he resigns
Yeah.
and then unresigns.
So much indecision. Sorry.
Well, certainly, one of the big things he's going to be getting his feet wet with right from the start is this waterfront development. And there's been so much that's happened with respect to that. I mean, Access is just having a lot of problems trying to get things jump-started down there. And then, of course, we had Suplee pull out. Were you surprised at all by Suplee pulling out?
The timing of it caught me a little bit by surprise.
That was my
because,
problem.
because just less than a week before that, he had been at the council meeting talking about, and he had some nice pictures and schematics, and I think it was at one of those meetings where he talked about the liquor license, that if we can't make this, we'll put it back. And so, and of course, Jay is too much of a gentleman to really divulge, you know, if there was any acrimony behind the scenes. But there's something that just doesn't quite line up between the time he was at the council and then
supporting the extension and then withdrawing.
exactly.
Yeah.
But you know, I do know that he's got a lot of projects going on. He's building a hotel up in Ashwaubenon, and he's got a restaurant going to Milwaukee, and so there's a lot. He's a lot of things going on, and this might have gotten to the point where he felt it was more speculative in nature than then
I know you've been supportive of the extension, but how long does Access have? I mean, are we going to go to the end of the year with nothing? We're going to go into
Well, I think
2009?
you got to look at it, just from a development calendar standpoint too. I think the reason why the council was was okay with waiting until the end of the year, and the reason why Access agreed to that too, was, you're not going to find, I guess I'm not trying to be too negative here, but you're not going to find a brand new development to come in and switch places with Access in a span of 6 months, and we've seen how long it takes in Oshkosh, especially when you're in a dour economy. So if you give this company until the end of the year to see what they can do to stir up some sort of partnerships, or namely bank financing, give them the time. I mean, what are we going to lose other than half a development cycle that probably would have not really seen much happen anyway? So, yeah, I think that answer your question.
Yeah,
I think
that's fine, yeah.
there wasn't any real harm
No.
to Oshkosh, really bad. So.
if there was another developer in the background
Right,
that
sure.
says, I need to get in before September,
Right.
but Access was blocking the way, then you'd have a different scenario. But to my knowledge, there's nobody else out there
Right.
that the city's been courting or who has been courting the city. So it doesn't seem to really harm anything to let this thing play out to whatever conclusion it comes to.
At some point, we go with the big developers who want to develop the whole area. This could be another failure. At some point, are we going to maybe have little developers doing little areas?
It was interesting because we had a chance to talk with Mayor Shirk and Bob Buckingham from the city of Neenah.
Okay.
Bob Buckingham is the director of their community development department, and they're doing a lot of development around their waterfront. They've got the walk-in and some other things going on. They've got some real nice corporate headquarters down there. But further to the north and west, they've got a tract of land behind Gladfelder property off Wisconsin Street. And we asked them about the potential of, are you looking at high-end condos? And Bob Buckingham said, oh no, the market won't support that. What we're looking at is market rate type of apartments with a water view. Now, that seems to me to be somebody who understands the market and the housing needs of the community. So what he's saying is that there'll be rental units probably, and there may be upscale apartments, but they're not going to be $300,000 condominium units because the market won't bear that. So I think Buckingham is onto something that may be a template for Oshkosh's waterfront. I mean, what's to say that any residential area on our waterfront has to be high-end condos or rent-to-own or whatever it might be? I mean, why not some market rate, nice apartments that would match up nicely with the Alexander Bishop units on Pearl Street there? So I think you're right, Dan. I think there is some opportunity for some, but I think it has to be coordinated and integrated. I don't think it can be hodgepodge, stuff popping up. I think you have to say, okay, this is going to be our residential.
Right.
Who wants in on this? We need some retail over here.
Right.
So I think that could happen. Yeah.
But Access isn't talking that. It's that business building and those big pillars. He isn't into this stuff that we're
Yeah,
talking
he does
about.
not want to let go of this office complex
it's just-
concept that he has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I, for one, I really like Tim Rickers. I
Oh,
like
absolutely.
him a lot.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate his enthusiasm and his willingness to put his own money and his sweat and blood and tears into this. But I just feel like every time there's a setback for him, we're hearing a slightly different version of the same old, same old. And I think a lot of the people I know that a lot of the people I'm talking to are feeling the same thing, and I think that a lot of people in the community are probably feeling that as well. Have you sensed that from your readers at all, or in talking to folks, that people are starting to maybe not trust him quite as much as they once did?
Well, I don't know if trust is the right word. I think they might be more cynical or skeptical of his
Okay,
ability
yeah.
to
Yeah.
deliver a development. And I think the economy is working against them.
Of course.
Yeah.
They had a really dynamic plan when they came in. If you go back and take a look at his first presentation to the council, he was talking about a grocery store was a given, and commercial and office space, and it captivated everybody because it seemed to be more in keeping with what the city needed as opposed to the Five River complex. So I think there was a high level of feeling that, okay, this makes sense to us. Let's get going, let's make it happen. And now I think people are saying, well, you know, the plan is changing, and now it's not as amiable as we thought it might be from the start. And so I think there's some skepticism developing.
I think it's also tough, not completely sympathizing with the developer in this case, but it is tough for developers in this kind of economy to, you need to be as honest as you can with the taxpayers. Obviously, they're your partners in this thing. But you also, it's difficult to, when a project's not going the way you wanted it to go, you know, do you just come out flat out and say, you know, danger, danger, we're having an issue? I guess I'd prefer that. But then a bank is going to say, forget about it then. So, you know, they're walking this fine line as private business people, where they're trying to get the confidence of a bank behind them. And that confidence of a bank is also helpful to a community, because that's where the money's going to come from to complement the public investment. And if a bank's not going to be there, if you just really show, or I guess if you have to come completely forward and show that it's not going to work, a bank's gone. It's over. Forget it. You can't get the private investment.
No, but I do think too that a bank, you know, takes a look at how many times different aspects of the project change, and
Sure.
and say, well, you know, really what's going on here? Your business plan, your business model is changing almost at every turn, and you know, what's the real deal here?
Well, see, the thing that we don't see and the public doesn't see is you don't, because of proprietary interest, you know, you don't see the full market study that any developer has done that is going to need to be sold to the bank for the bank to come in on it. And I don't think the bank is necessarily as concerned about how many times has it changed. I think the bank and the financing wants to see, okay, how viable is this?
Right.
What's your, you know, what do your studies show? Where do you get the data from? How
does the
valid
cash
is
flow?
it? Yeah, and they look at those things. So I'm not. I think that the public looks at it differently than potential investors look at it.
Okay. Go ahead.
Let's stay on city issues for a minute. We've had a couple people in here, County Executive Mark Harris last time, for example, and they're all pointing to the fact that this city budget for 2009 is going to be very, very difficult. Do you sense that? And you know, we're not on the revenue side. Other than fees, there isn't new revenue, and so really it becomes almost, what are you going to cut? Do you see that budget in 2009 as being a really difficult one, maybe one of the most difficult ones we've had in a long time?
Yeah, I really do. I think that, you know, the city, you know, if you step back and take a look at why are we in the situation that we're in, is because we, for many, many years, artificially kept our tax rates low, and that limits the amount of tax revenue we can generate now. And of course, everybody gets all heebie-jeebies when you start talking about my property tax level. But you know, Oshkosh is comparatively speaking to other cities in Wisconsin, is not a heavily taxed city. Yet now we're going to bump up against these caps that are in place. And so I think, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how the city manager,
Yes.
you know, what budget he puts forward and how he's able to balance that budget. I think it is going to be a difficult budget cycle.
So he's got two tough ones, economic development and a tough budget coming up.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because, you know, one of the things that he emphasized to us was that his main priority is looking at the infrastructure in town. And
that came out in your editorial.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
You said if there's one thing you want to know about a community, it's infrastructure.
Right.
And we need a lot of better
Yeah.
infrastructure. I mean, anyone
And
can.
I don't think people so much would have a problem with an investment in things like streets,
Well,
especially when they look out their front doors and see, you know, the crumbled ruins some of them are in. But the trick is, mathematically and under tax freezes and things, how do you even make that work? You're really stuck spinning your wheels, so to speak, because you bump up against the cap. Even if you have municipal support and the support of your people to fix up the city, you can't, because you don't have the revenue now, especially in this economy, once again, the economy, to do it. So you're really trapped.
It's got to have council votes too.
Yeah. And then, of course, you know, I talk to people and I say, yeah, they're fixing a road and, you know, I've got to pay X amount for the road. And they're like, you got to pay to fix your road? What do your taxes go for? You know, and they think that this is just, I don't know, they look at me like I'm from outer space when I'm telling them this.
Just
and
from Oshkosh.
yeah, that's right. our own kind of outer space. Well, as we tape, did you have anything else on the
No,
site
I
for
think
right
that's
now,
enough
or
on
we,
city.
and
No,
we can always
no,
come
no,
back
we can go
too,
back, but no, that's good.
Well, as we're taping this, a new school superintendent is being picked. They've been at this for a few hours already.
I thought tonight we were going to say, all right, guys, who's the new superintendent? And they can,
Wish we could tell you.
Yeah.
Wish we could tell
Well,
you.
you guys certainly talked to all three.
Right.
Do you have a sense of who might be the better choice?
Well, I hate to handicap these things because you know, we don't have we talk with them, but we don't have access to you know, their personnel files and their background that the school board is looking at, and I think it'd be a little bit presumptuous for us to say, well, there's the obvious candidate. I think they've got three good candidates. I think, you know, their backgrounds are speak well for them. You know, I found it a little bit surprising that every superintendent's vacancy in the state of Wisconsin is filled by somebody from the state of Wisconsin.
oh, it's a move up the ladder.
Yeah, but I mean, and I guess the question I would have is Wisconsin not capable of attracting outside talent? And if we're not, why aren't we? Now, this is not to say that these three candidates are not the best of the batch that the recruitment firm came up with, but I think it is kind of interesting that Green Bay fills a position, Madison fills a position, Neenah fills a position. They're all filled from candidates that come from Wisconsin.
You know, I think it comes down to the fact that we have good schools in Wisconsin. We have a nice quality of life in Wisconsin, and if you're an educational professional of that rank in Wisconsin, you want to stay in Wisconsin. And you know, especially in the Fox cities, in the Fox Valley, and the Oshkosh area, the communities are relatively close enough where there's a lot of, you know, commuting, moving around, and you know another community's complexion compared to this community. You know, it's bound to happen.
I think what we're learning today is that there is some differing point of views on the school board about which candidate is the best choice, because Amy Weinstein was relatively certain that they would be making an announcement today, this evening. They broke at about 3:30 after meeting for about in excess of 3 hours, hadn't come to a decision, are going to meet again presumably tomorrow. We haven't gotten the meeting notice yet. So there's not a candidate that has knocked everybody's socks off completely. And we don't know whether there's all three of them are still in the running, or they've eliminated one and boiled it down to two. But clearly what Amy would like to do is be able to go to the public and say, this is it. This was, you know, a 7-0 decision. We're ready to move forward. We're solidly behind this candidate. She can't do that now, because she can't explain why the selection wasn't made on Thursday when that was the timetable she had set.
Right.
You know, so obviously there's some strong discussion going back and forth between the board members on the qualifications of at least two, possibly all three of the candidates.
Do you think, because they did spend money on a nationwide search and then just came up with candidates,
Yeah,
as you
yeah,
said,
you know,
from the state?
one of the funniest things I've read recently is on our forums. Somebody said, well, wait a minute, we spent $20,000 for a national search, and we could have done this with a $100 ad in the Northwestern.
Yeah.
You got two within a half hour of
Yeah.
Oshkosh.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe that had something to do with the fact that they kind of put this search on a fast track because of the referendum coming up? And I mean, they've got a lot of work to do. If they had not rushed it,
No,
could they
I
maybe have
think
gotten more?
that, and I came to the same conclusion with the city manager search, is that there's a finite pool,
Yeah.
and everybody knows who's in that pool, and so it's not hard to go through the recruitment process.
Right.
It's more a matter of, is the fit right
Right.
for the individual in the school district. So, no, I don't think that the fact that it was fast-tracked has put them in this position.
And I think in a school district setting, it's even more, you know, moving about the pieces, and there's a lot of shifting going on, even more so than city management.
Is this a more cohesive board, though, since the last school board election? I mean, even though they may not reach a 7-0 vote on this issue, but do you think they're getting along better and less contentious than it was before?
I think they are making an earnest effort, and it remains to be seen how that stays in place as you get closer to the referendum. I think this particular board learned from past mistakes. I think they looked at the April election as a chance to have a do-over. Let's wipe the slate clean and see if we can, come to some consensus and be at least civil to one another. So I think they're making an earnest attempt. All 7 are. It'll be interesting to see how long that holds up, if they can hold that together.
I think they were also scared. You not only did you have this budget situation they're going to be in, and we're in, but you've got your superintendent deciding to move to a different school district, and then your finance guy leaves, and suddenly the school year is approaching. Summer just started. We got some work to do.
And a referendum's approaching.
And a referendum's approaching.
And there's a lot of work involved in that.
Right, and I think they just realized, okay, it's time to go to work here for the community's sake, and we've got to get some things accomplished here. So I think you're seeing that too.
Why didn't they hire Todd Gray as superintendent?
Well, I don't think they had the opportunity to hire him. I think they wanted to honor the process of opening up the search, looking at the candidates, in the best interest of the school district. I don't think that they were prepared to make an anointment of a particular person, and I think Todd was looking at his opportunities, and Waukesha was out there, and certainly that's an attractive school district. And I think Todd figured, well, wait a minute, now it's become speculative. Do I wait to see if I compete for the job in Oshkosh and maybe not get it, or do I throw my hat in the ring at Waukesha and try for that? So I think the timing was just bad, and I think it would have been irresponsible. As much as I've known Todd Gray for a long time, I respect him and I like him. I think it would have been an error to hire him without the benefit of a search and an interview process and do an earnest examination of the best candidates available.
Could have appointed an interim director or superintendent for a year and forget this transition that they would not have had to have gone through.
Well, I think that Alex's point about getting prepared for a referendum, I'm not sure you can go into a referendum with an interim superintendent in place. I think you have to have stability, somebody that is going to be there, is going to guide the process, and is going to be, help educate the community. If you have an interim, you might lose some of that potential going into
in the marketplace of talent too, I think is going to work to Oshkosh's favor. I mean, you didn't have a lot of people sitting tight in their jobs, pretty happy with their jobs and not willing to move around. I mean, you had an opportunity to really lure some different kinds of talent, different styles of people to a new opportunity here in Oshkosh. And I think based on the caliber of candidates that threw their hats into the ring, and the 3 gentlemen that they ended up with as finalists, not too bad, and pretty decent people with decent backgrounds.
I think there was some thought on the board at one time that Todd Gray would be the perfect fit, the perfect hire. Do we have the votes? Let's do it. But I think the April election changed that. And I think once that happened is when Todd started looking around and saying, okay, what's my best option for my career and my family? And I don't think you can find fault with the school board. I think it's just that the dynamics changed after April.
I want to talk about the referendum in just a little bit, but somebody had asked me a question today when I said that you guys were going to be on. Excuse me, and they had noticed that you had done certainly profiles on all 3 of the superintendent candidates, but they said you only did 1 article on 1 meet and greet. Now, did they miss articles on the other 2 meet and greets?
No, we did 2 articles on the meet and greets of the first 2 candidates. The third one, the meet and greet, was yesterday, so we folded that into a story about the timetable that was on A1 this morning.
So they may have missed 1.
They may have missed. They may have missed 1. Yeah, because what we decided to do is run all the profiles on the front page, bottom of the front page, 3 consecutive days, and the meet and greet would run with the continuation of the stories on the inside of the paper.
Okay.
Not my department. Yeah, rightly so.
He answered it.
Yeah.
Well, I said, hey, they're going to be on. I'll ask.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not.
Liquor licenses. This goes kind of back to the city issues again, but we just saw this big harangue a few weeks ago about where this liquor license that used to belong to Decade Properties and the Pioneer Inn should go to, and it ultimately went to the Boatyard Bar and Grill. It's project that's coming up from Sweetwater Performance, but you guys did an editorial that this whole liquor license thing should be changed.
I think we've done a few.
Yeah. Do you think that the liquor license went to the right project at this point, even though they all had some kind of viability to them?
I think the issuing of liquor license is a roll of the dice. You hope that you pick the best establishment that's going to do some economic development or spur some traffic in the downtown area or whatever your aim is, but you really don't know until they've got a chance to operate their business. And I think that the council listened to 5 presentations, was it?
And 6 on the list, maybe.
Yeah,
and
I think the thing that was convincing, at least in my mind, was the track record of the establishment. I mean, they've put a lot of investment into that property, made some improvements in that property. The project fit in nicely with what the city's goals are for redeveloping the downtown and the riverfront. So I think in this particular case there were 2 proposals that were probably ahead of the other 4 based on experience and the applications and the people that made the applicants. And I think obviously it's never an easy choice to make, but I think that the council probably made the choice that was probably the safest one to make. And it's too bad they had to make a choice. And it's too bad that you can't let the market determine.
That could be, we've written that several times, and I think we even use the word ridiculous, that here we are again, turning to our municipal council to decide which small business, which entrepreneurs, I'm going to hope, dream deserves, the license to pour liquor and do a bar business.
But the limits are set by the state. Not
Right,
by the city.
correct.
You've got to change the state law if you're going to
Right.
change the
And as
formula.
far as we can tell, that ain't going to happen.
No,
There was a little gust of wind a couple of years ago, a year ago, but it got squashed.
Well, and I think ridiculous is the right word for it, as you said, Alex, because in what other business
Exactly.
does the state or anyone else for that
Right.
matter dictate how many of those kinds of businesses?
Right.
I mean, unless it's a contractual thing like, Time Warner Cable had a franchise agreement for a very long time. But other than something like that, what else gets dictated to how many of a certain kind of business you can have in a
Exactly.
community?
And again, I think, if you believe in letting the marketplace determine success and failure, why inhibit somebody's chance of success by arbitrarily saying you can't have a liquor license to put your business, open your doors?
And that's been one of the things that, I find the most hypocritical about those who stand by and sort of allow the liquor license system that we have in Wisconsin exist. These are the same people, I think, judging by, I think I know their politics a little bit, who would be the first to pound their fist on the table and say, let the market rule, leave us alone, stay out of our business. Yet, when it comes to liquor and there's a competitive angle, well, we really don't want to mess with that. I mean, it's a Depression era law. It's been here for a long time. It's like, give me a break.
It's free market until it hurts your market.
Now, I will say this. The one issue that people, reasoned people, do bring to my attention, and I think they have a sound argument, is, what about alcohol? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about, don't we have enough alcohol? And I think that's a great question. But once again, not really a controlled substance or anything. I mean, the marketplace might, if somebody's getting a little overzealous with it, not doing a good business, if the police have to get involved, that place probably isn't going to survive.
Don't you think there's a finite number of shot and beers that are going to be served in Oshkosh on any given night? I mean, just because you have more places to go to doesn't mean that you're going to be serving more liquor. Where are these people going to come from? I mean, hopefully you'd have some people come in from out of town, I suppose, but I think the competitive factor is going to even that concern out. Will the small neighborhood bar owner suffer? Probably, quite possibly.
And look at the business plans coming forward, applying for these licenses. They're not all just straight up hardcore bars and that's it. There's been a few taverns that have been proposed, but even the taverns that are proposed are trying to develop more of a
Entertainment.
come on in, more of a historic angle. It's not just a place to, crassly pour booze and hopefully make a
They're trying to
a
create
belly
an
full of money
atmosphere.
out of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're trying to
venue.
answer a need in the community that we hear repeatedly at the newspaper. Why can't there be one or two more restaurants in Oshkosh, in the central city? And I don't think people are saying that because they're, snooty restaurateur types. I think they're saying that because they seriously would like a few more options, and they can't have it unless they're going to build some sort of Goliath 300-seat restaurant. And the last time we checked, the banks won't finance that. So small restaurants with the ability to pour you a drink.
Niche restaurants.
Niche restaurants, character restaurants, family is still welcome. I mean, that's a healthy part of a community, and we can't have it in Oshkosh, and that's just sad.
Well, what perplexed me about this whole discussion over the liquor license was, I found the debate fascinating, but what really kind of perplexed me was Councilman Palmieri's attitude. He was like a dog with a bone that he was not going to vote on this that night. He would not let it go. He wanted to wait and have input from the city on, which was a more viable project. I mean, it was just, after a while, it was just like, come on, Tony, let it go,
See, I think a sounder position that he could have taken is let's have a very standardized process where we demand certain documents from the applicants, a business plan, number of employees you expect, the whole thing, so we can see how they stack up against one another. Because even if you have a rock solid business plan, that doesn't guarantee success.
Right.
And what he was looking for is somebody on city staff
Right.
to say, here's the one that will ultimately succeed.
Right.
And they can't promise that.
No,
No one
but
can.
but I think you could elevate the process and have some basic requirements of the applicants to come in with some form of financial backing, an estimate on the number of employees you expect to hire, what your payroll is going to be. That would give the council the ability to really compare them on even terms to make a better selection. I think in this particular case, two of the applicants made those presentations, and so they were able to make a selection. But I don't think it's fair to throw it back on the professional staff and say which one of these guys are going to be successful.
Well, I could see what Tony was trying to accomplish, and kudos to him for trying that. But it was the way, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and it struck me as that here's a politician that wants to be able to blame somebody else for his vote. Well, they told me, don't blame me. They told me. And I think, issuing a liquor license is a political decision.
Sure.
And I think the politicians have to make that decision and do the best they can with the information they have, and not, pour it back on the administrative.
Burke Tower did have sort of a matrix.
He did.
And,
He did.
and that's the first time I've seen it. He was really doing
Exactly.
sort of a linear,
Yes.
comparison
Right.
with certain things that he wanted.
Right.
Maybe they'll do more of that.
Well, and he is a business expert.
Yeah.
So
Small business.
Yeah.
That's his
And I,
forte.
and I think what you can do is you can create a packet for the applicants
Fill
with
out.
worksheets to pick up and fill out and provide to the council the next time a liquor
Here-
license is available.
Here's another way to approach what I think Councilor Palmieri was ultimately getting at, which is, where is our, in quotes, professional government now? When I need them to help guide me. I think that what you could have done if you really wanted to test professional government, maybe this is going to be an exercise we could even throw the way of our new city manager, is instead of just going to meetings and keeping abreast of the situation and the political complexion of the state at these Wisconsin Alliance of Cities and League of Municipalities meetings, dear city manager, here's the mandate from our city council. You go start developing a coalition and apply pressure in the state legislature and on the state tavern league to get this law changed. We are tired of wasting taxpayers' time deciding whether business A, B, and C is better. That's not our job. Our job is to set policy, to make the decisions in the best interest of the people. Giving out, the keys to a business, essentially, give me a break. That's not our job. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit more noise from professional organizations that represent our communities could shake some fear into the powers that be down there and get a really ridiculous law changed. That would be professional government in action.
We are a country that had a constitutional amendment on prohibition that lasted 12 or 15 years. I mean, this is the hardcore blue law in this country, that you have to control alcohol. This is where it comes from. I mean, it'll probably be the last to go. It's not a business argument.
But while you're trying to control it, you're not controlling what stores can sell. I mean, we're not putting a limit on what, Pick and Save's liquor department
Well,
or
that's that
festival.
old demon rum,
I
isn't
tell
it?
you, these older people grew up on the McGuffey Reader, and it's touch not, taste not, feel not, and this is one of them. It'll be a hard sell. And I agree with it. It's not consistent. It's not logical, but it's part of our history. You got to control it.
Yeah. I've got another question
Oh, good.
about city business.
Yeah.
While we're still thinking
Going to move
about
to
that.
Kool-Aid or?
No. It's kind of, kind of an offshoot on what you were talking about the school board. How do you guys think the current city council is functioning as a group? They've been together now starting their second year, a little bit into their second year
Well,
together.
if you want to talk about latching onto a bone and not letting go, I do have a problem with this council member statements at the end of the meeting.
We've
because-
editorialized on it.
Yes,
Yes.
and it is contrary to Wisconsin's concept of open government, because they can and they have transacted business and discussed issues of some depth and detail after the public has checked out. And I think this council has got a lot of ingenuity about it. I think they are all students of the game. But it is annoying to me that they continue to feel that it's all right to have these policy discussions after the agenda is over under council member statements, announcements, and discussions. And I think that the mayor should take the lead and say, do we really need this? What benefit is this to the city, as opposed to the signal it sends to the residents? And I think if they would take that one bold step. Now, we have offered them all space in the newspaper to write a council member statement up to 300 words the Monday before the meeting, say anything they want that's on their mind. We'll run them all.
Right.
And so far, we've had one
Fine.
council member that's taken us up on that.
That was Jess King? Or?
Yes, and I think she's written 3 pieces, and they've been pieces.
I missed one.
They-
I
they-
think I missed one.
They've been issues that are near and dear to her heart that she could bring up under council member statements, but has decided, let me get them into the newspaper where the public can see what's on my mind and evaluate what's important to me. They should all take us up on that. I mean, we're offering them free space in the newspaper on a regular basis, and the only thing I can come up with is that these are spur of the moment. Last person that talked to me, I need to mention this at the meeting to make sure that I get my airtime, and I think it's bad open government.
What I would prefer to see on councilor statements is drop them and give that time back to the public, but do it in a different kind of structure. Create something called something under the auspices of Ask the Staff, where we may not have your answer tonight, but we're willing to hear you out, and if we don't have it tonight, we'll get back to you 24, 40 hours. That is our pledge to you, the citizens of Oshkosh. Councilor statements, and I think I said this before on your show, to me is the action of the agenda. We made our statement. We voted this way for Oshkosh. We voted that way for Oshkosh. What more statement do you need? I mean, you've got the power to cast a vote and change the complexion of the community. That's a statement. Stu's right. It meanders into these. I've heard way too much concern about, well, when are we going to be able to talk about the things that we need to talk about? It's like, I'm sorry. My heart's not breaking for you. You've got the ability to vote on this stuff. You've got the ability to go to a city staff member and say, draft me a resolution.
Or an
I'm a
ordinance,
city
yeah.
councilor. I don't have that ability. I can write an editorial with my editorial board's blessing and urge them to, but I don't have the ability to say, please do this, and they do it. That's a statement. it's just rife for abuse.
I can see how this sort of, the last meeting that was the last editorial that I saw you write on this, Stu, you know, it started, I think, with Councilman Esslinger asking about the golf course, and he was asking a simple question, and from there it just exploded into a big, long discussion about, you know, what was going on and when they were going to have answers for the folks out there. And, you know, now granted, he could have just gone to a city staff member privately and asked the question. I think he was probably asking on camera so that the majority of the residents out there might be able to know or whatever, but it gets into a gray area.
But and to build on Alex's point, he has the ability to call for a workshop meeting after the council meeting, properly noticed, where we're going to discuss West Haven Golf Course, Lakeshore, flood abatement, sewer systems, anything that pertains to the current flooding situation. We wanted to have a full and thorough discussion of that after the council meeting. Good. Everybody can show up, listen, participate. You can make it accessible so you can take citizen statements at a workshop. I think that's a much better way of doing it. It's much more open, much more forthright, and it's much more inclusive, as opposed to the potential abuse that council member statements open up, particularly with this council. This council seems to be enamored with the ability to make policy statements and have wide-ranging discussions that the public is excluded from. There's ways of the council members doing exactly what you suggest, Cheryl, in a much more open way.
Well, sure, he could have asked the question privately, and then when, you know, he started getting the answer that we all heard him get on camera, you know, he could have gone to the mayor and said, we need to call a workshop on this.
There's a lot of information here we need to explore, and we need to do it quickly because of the situation. You know, and I don't see where that would be harmful to the deliberative process. You know, it would be more inclusive. It would give people a clear idea of what's going to be discussed and whether they can participate or not. One of the things that troubled me is shortly after I wrote my critique of that, Councilmember Palmieri on his blog said, well, wait a minute now, this gave us the opportunity to sweat some information out of the administration and get some facts on the table and hold them accountable. And in my mind, that was a little bit like the ends justifying the means. In other words, let's waterboard these guys at Guantanamo and get some information out of them. It may not be legal, but it's going to help the national security. That's in essence what Tony said. You know, why should we not do this? We can get valuable information from the administration. Well, wait a minute, do it within the parameters of the law.
The city has a very weak committee structure, though, in a normal legislative process. You could refer it back to a committee. They don't meet very often. They only meet an hour or once a month. I mean, the legislative bodies really need a strong committee structure, and this city does not have a strong committee structure. And so what do you do?
Well, and I think that gets back to the argument over the form of government. You know, the city manager form of government is the professionalism, and we're not political, and we've got the professionals that can give you the information you need. We don't have to have a committee in place other than the ones that the law requires. I will tell you one thing, that if there's an aldermanic form of government in this city on June 12th of this year, there'd have been some answers over on 8th Street like yesterday. because the people on 8th Street could have gone to their alderman and said, help me out here. And the alderman would have. Now, who do you go to in a at-large form of government? You've got 7 people representing everybody, 7 people representing nobody. And it was interesting to me that it was the parish priest at Sacred Heart on Knapp Street that held the neighborhood meeting to hear people out. Shouldn't that be a function of government at some place to help these people through this crisis? And this council and this city manager better watch out, because I think it would not take much to pass a change of government form of resolution based on waterfront development, budgets, flooding, sewers, streets. You know, I think people could be convinced that this.
I've never heard you speak that strong.
Oh,
on that.
I have been leaning in this direction for.
But this is pretty. This is saying
I-
2009. Watch your steps.
I wrote an open letter in my column
Okay.
to Mark Roloff.
Okay.
And I said, don't listen to anybody. You know, you're going to get a lot of advice. Don't listen to what you need to do is restore confidence in this form of government. That's your number one job, because it needs to be
Yeah.
rebuilt.
I think you're right.
And so how's this council doing? I think you've got some extremely intelligent people on that council. And I think they are committed to the betterment of Oshkosh. I think their hearts are in the right place. I think they need to be careful about the confidence factor that the residents have in this form of government.
I think you need a complete cultural change if the professional form of government is going to continue. And it isn't just manager, it's council. I'd like to think if I or maybe some other idealistic person were on that city council on June 12th when the rain hit, or maybe early in the morning, June 13th, when there were fish swimming on 6th Avenue, literally. I'm putting on my waders and I'm running down there, and I'm like, how's everybody? Is everybody okay?
Yeah.
You know? I'm calling my employer and saying, hey, gotta take a day off. Jim Smith's basement's caving in, and he's 75 and has difficulty getting around his house. I mean, it got to those proportions, and we were not impressed with the lack of some on-the-ground team or support or somebody to jump into the place that may be the complete antithesis. You may have people steaming hot mad at city government for maybe even the wrong reasons the day after. Doesn't matter. You get down there, you help them, you hear them, you figure out what can we do to help, and I don't think that happens.
By all accounts, the departments within the city government performed admirably that night and the next morning and ongoing. Sanitation department, the police and fire did some heroic things to help people out,
Yes,
and save
yes.
property.
Public safety.
And public safety, and I think we should acknowledge that,
Yeah.
that those on the ground folks rolled up their sleeves and performed admirably. But what was missing was that sense of who's in charge and who's gonna help me through this. And that's when Alex says, feet on the ground, visible, approachable, don't worry, we're taking care of it, we're gonna, that was lacking from this.
And for Mayor Tower to tell this lady,
Yes.
we're gonna take care of this in 2 weeks.
And then it doesn't happen?
It doesn't happen. That's not.
See, and I guess one of the things that I'd like to have a discussion at some point, maybe an editorial board with Mayor Tower, but I'd like to know who's he mayor for.
Right.
It appears to me that he's the mayor for the city administration.
Yeah. Getting
Because
to be
he-
that way more.
Because he was in a very protective mode last, 2 Tuesday nights ago with city staff, trying to take the heat off of them. Or is he going to be the mayor of the residents of Oshkosh? And my perception is that he's in pretty tight with City Hall, and he carries a lot of the water for them. And I think that he ought to step back and say, let me redefine my role as mayor in this city.
Quit giving away keys to the city and help those people over there, right?
I don't mind if he wants
No,
to give
I
away
don't
the
either,
keys.
but-
I mean, give a bucket full of keys away.
I understand, but his priorities seem to be in the wrong place.
For as much hemming and hawing there's been over the last few years about the power we afford the mayor,
Yeah.
you still, if you're the mayor,
Yeah.
you make it what you want to be.
Yeah.
Want to make it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Almost out of time, but the referendum for the school district is coming up in February. Any chance that you think of it passing? I know I'm asking you to speculate again here, but there's been so much where people just are not happy with all this stuff that's gone on with boundaries and schools and that kind of thing. At least there's been some vocal people who have, shown their disgust.
I think there's a window of opportunity, but it has to be done correctly, and it has to be done candidly with the voters. And I think the minute it turns divisive about this proposal versus that proposal versus this boundary line versus that boundary line, I think they lose that opportunity to get it passed. I think that, certainly getting the superintendent on board and functioning and working towards that is important. There's a window of opportunity they need to take advantage of and make sure that it's done properly, and that yes, you have to let people have input, but there's a point where you say, this is the plan, get on board, we need to get this done. And so yes, I think there's a chance, but I think it has to be handled and orchestrated remarkably well with a lot of forethought and education put to it.
And they're going to have to start soon. I mean, I've seen
Yes.
these referendums in other communities that, I mean, they're starting 6, 8, 9 months back. And so we're already into August now.
Right.
And we've got a referendum in 6 months.
Right.
Don't have, well, maybe at this moment we have we still don't have a school
yeah.
superintendent because they broke until tomorrow, but, you know, we can't just keep dawdling on this. We got to get going.
No, and I think this new superintendent has to hit the ground running, and I think he has to coalesce a lot of groups out there, and there's a honeymoon factor that might work in their favor, where you can get people together in agreement. But I think you've got one shot to get it right.
Real quickly, how's the new format working out for you guys? It looks good online. It was a little hard, I think, for myself to navigate it at first.
It
you
was
know,
for us too a little bit.
You know,
Yeah.
and I'm still learning a little bit.
Yeah,
But,
there's some things about the old site that I miss, and I know that our users miss. The forums, the formats of the forums.
It was
and
easier to
storage
get
chats.
in, to dive into a
Yeah.
conversation right out of the box.
But I think it's a philosophical shift in what a newspaper website needs to be. Some folks preferred it when it was the newspaper online, and we've shifted to a different type of user experience where there's more interactivity, there's social networking going on, there's blogging, you can create your own blog, submit your own photos. That doesn't appeal to a lot, to some users. We're hoping to engage users who might not come to a typical newspaper site, bring them on board, let them test drive it a little bit.
I've gone around and done a couple presentations as if some of my colleagues in the information center, and you know what we're telling people now is, don't just read your newspaper, be your newspaper. I mean, literally, all the tools are laid before you. They're on the website, and you have just as much opportunity to leverage all the attention our paper gets, which is a lot, to your benefit, your organization's benefit, and it's pretty remarkable what people can do if they really want to try it.
well, and yet you still have to exercise some kind of discretion as to what people are putting on there. And I know one of the things that I read this past week was there was an incident with Patty Wagstaff out at EAA,
right.
and you know somebody was complaining because they had put some comments on one of the stories, and they were complaining because they kept getting deleted.
Right.
And I didn't see the
Right.
comments, probably because I
Yeah.
came too late.
Yeah.
But
Well, basically, we're not going to allow users on our forums to make allegations of criminal activity that are unsubstantiated by charges, citations, arrests, and that's basically what's going on. Somebody with some inside knowledge of what transpired was saying, "Here's what happened. I know this is what happened. Why aren't you reporting it?" Well, we didn't have documentation. We didn't have citations. We couldn't, and we would not let them do that online either.
People are learning the role and responsibility of journalists from scratch, and they're users and readers of the newspaper. You know, they're realizing that, hey, I can just post this out there. You
Yeah.
know, but they don't stop to think. You know, we've learned our lessons the hard way in journalism. If you do that, you're going to get burned. And if you haven't checked your facts and made sure that it's okay, you're in trouble. So
I hear you.
they're learning.
all right, excellent. Well, thanks to both of you
thanks.
again.
Well,
It's
thank you.
always
Yeah.
fun to
Yeah.
have you guys here.
Anytime.
So, thanks to Dan, thanks to the crew, and as always, thanks to you. We'll see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.